Yo, welcome to Red Pill Diaries. A bunch of red pills behind me. So today I'm going to speak about something that, if you link history together with ancient Greek history, ancient Roman history, um, movies like Jason and the Argonauts, I'm gonna put a link here as well to a video, really interesting video that links these things together with automata, whatever, plural, robots, potential ancient robots, or at least a very good prediction of the creation of these things. Talking about parallels between artificial intelligence, that unlimited information, effectively what we're getting to the stage of now, and how things like automatons, robots, drones, things like that, throughout history, they always seem to be controlled by tyrants, and it doesn't seem to have changed today. Now, I'm going to put this video because it's extremely interesting, but the thing I wanted to speak about that I think is related to it is nowadays, if you were to look at, imagine what happened during the Syria crisis, right? So if you believe the mainstream narrative, it was that Hillary Clinton and wanted to go in there and get rid of, basically, a regime change war. She wanted to get rid of Assad. They didn't like Assad. He's already been on a list. Their country was on a list, along with Iran and others that haven't yet been attacked. Yemen was on that list as well, I think. It has been attacked now, of course. So imagine there's a situation where, obviously, as I've spoken about in many episodes, we are the cattle. We're being harvested by each farmer. Imagine that the head of each farm is run by some, let's just call it an alien creature. I don't mean like a little green man alien. I just mean alien to us, very different to us. Whether that's a different species of human being, whether it's a hybrid, whether it's some elitist group that is so different to us, they've made themselves different by choice, by shunning their soul, whatever it might be. Just some kind of difference between us. And these are sick, twisted creatures, and they thrive upon being vindictive, torturous, all the really despicable aspects that people who are psychopaths share, right? Or can share. So their dream and goal, just like you'd have someone in society who dreams of picking up little children to rape and murder them, you would have this megalomaniac who wants something bigger. He's a Donald Trump sized person. He's a Joe Biden sized person. His appetite's much bigger, right? He's a Putin, whoever the hell it is that you want to vilify. But the reality is, I'm just waiting for my dog to come in here. But the reality is, they've all used these weapons and rained them down on people. I remember George Bush saying something along the lines of, they'll rain down like fire. They try to make very biblical terms out of these things, and how we might represent these events in thousands of years' time, or rather, how the victims of these tyrants might write these in the future. So, in 1,000 years' time, the people of Iraq, if they find some modern equivalent of a tablet, or let's say it's an iPad, and it's got some people recording of what happened to them when the Scud missiles were flying over from, leaving Saddam to go to other countries or to stay within his borders to hit American soldiers, and also the American bombs hitting them. Of course, there was soldiers getting killed, but the main thing is there was civilians getting killed, over a million in Syria also. So if you think about the amount of human suffering there that they're getting out of it, it just sounds just like these stories of the biblical era, or the recycled stories of the Bible, because that's effectively what they seem to be when you look at Sumerian, everything back to Sumerians, but also the from the time to Atlantis and all these other times in history. You're having these repeating stories, Pandora being repeated as maybe Eve, being repeated as various characters throughout history, You have you have you have the statue, not Statue of David. What's it called again? The one in the movie Jason the Argonauts with the metal creature. I can't remember the name of the metal creature, but it mentions it in this video that I'm going to link down there. And basically, it had a bolt in its heel, just like Achilles had the heel and the arrow. There's a lot of these names that seem to be similar. So maybe the translations are very close for that reason, that the names were actually reutilized. My point being is that these people that are in control, they get control seems to fall into their lap through nepotistic means from one generation to the next. Look at George Bush. The guy's a moron. Trump, might be good for America in some ways, might be bad for America, whatever you think of him. But his dad became wealthy and passed on the power to him, and he's not a great genius. I don't think he's a bad guy. I don't think he's what the people, what the mainstream media would say about him. I think that the people who have been in charge the last 20 years are more the demonic souls that the media make Trump out to be. But let's get beyond that one. The real thing here is, what have they done? Now, here's one good point there, actually, just based upon that Trump scenario. Trump hasn't created new wars. He has continued bombing people. Barack Obama ran out of bombs to kill brown people that he was apparently, the friend of, to create the massive droves of people that were trying to enter America for a better life, or just to escape horrendous misfortune and struggle and misery. So, he was, you could say, he was the guy at the helm of the ship. And as much as you can say, he didn't run the House and the Senate. You do have executive powers to do certain things. Trump has failed to do a lot of things he could have done. Barack Obama definitely did. And not just that, he actively pursued things that you could just see were evil. And as a result, you have not just all the deaths that you had in Libya and places like that, but you also had open human slave markets. You have, this is just bearing on his country alone, the non-freedom movement of his own people. So Americans can't freely move around the world the way they used to be able to move around the world, because there's so many countries that see them as enemies. And it literally is too dangerous to travel as an American in many parts of the world, in most Muslim countries. Just a fact, sad to say. But that was done by their own leaders, well, the people that they think represent them. So if you imagine, and comparing it to biblical times, King Herod and all these tyrants of old, this modern version is kind of the same thing. Right, we're going to do these Hellfire missiles. We're going to come up with these Tomahawk cruise missiles. Right, and they're just taking great joy in watching this. Here's another example. Look at the situation with. We know it's not a maybe now. It's a fact that the bombs in Nagasaki and Hiroshima did not need to be dropped. They dropped them for fun. They dropped them like God with a magnifying glass burning ants, as if it was nothing, and just to have for sheer bloodlust. This is no different than some of the, I can't remember the one before Julius Caesar. I can't remember his bloody name. There was a Roman emperor who was known. I don't think he did maximum 20 years, but he was known for being just pure evil, And if you look at the crimes against humanity that some of these modern leaders have committed, and they say about Gaddafi, but he wasn't actually that bad. But there's more like people in Africa, between the Rwanda and genocide, General Butt Naked, people like that. The not just the amount of people they killed, but the way they killed them. You have to say that these people are actually record beating. It's almost like, in the same way that the king of Saudi Arabia builds a bigger building to show off, and then the Burj Al Khalifa gets built to rival the next one, either in Dubai or Abu Dhabi or somewhere like that. They're all taking pissing contests. These tyrants throughout time, these tyrant elites that they tend to be around the world, They try one up each other in who can be the most horrible. I'm trying to not swear. So I would say that if you really look at that, some of the top contenders now would be George Bush and Barack Obama, and then definitely Tony Blair, and these would be some of the biggest tyrants of our time. There's obviously people working behind the scenes that we don't get to know about, the faceless people who you may even say are the main perpetrators of evil and violence around the world. There's obviously people who are the richest people in the world who, for example, we're told that Jeff Bezos is like a trillionaire, the first trillionaire. I think if anyone really believes that Jeff Bezos is the first trillionaire, I've got a bridge to sell you. There's definitely people who we don't know. They're people who are allowed to become rich because they're actors of the system. They fulfill a role, whether it be a hate figure, whether it be a symbolism or something like that. Like these ancient, Pandora symbol. There's these symbols. Talos was one that was mentioned in this video. So many missiles are called Talos. The new armor system from the US military is called Talos, and they'll come up with any excuse to make that the acronym, So I think what we've been really seeing is the playing out of modern biblical times. We think people keep on saying biblical times are coming. Biblical times have been here for, well, at least since the Second and First World War. It's just carried on, really, isn't it? It might not be everyone seeing it at once. And in this case, for example, during the Iraq war, it wasn't us seeing it. During the war in Syria, it wasn't us seeing it. It was just those people seeing those horrors that would never get exposed for us to even have any truth of what was going on over there. So our tyrants were able to get away with genocide, mass murder, and taking most likely great glee and joy in the whole situation, because that's what we believe they feed on, is the screams and pains and anguish, and the families torn apart, and anguish for the loss of their mum or dad, whoever it might be, or the destruction of their country, or the destruction of the species, and all that. Look at where devastation is around the world. You look at the Philippines with the palm trees, the palm oil farms, and watching what happens to the orangutan habitat. You can't help but feel sad and overpowered with maybe even depression, but just extreme sadness, devastation. It does seem that something in this world feeds off this, and given the fact that these things are trying to create biblical levels of suffering intentionally, and that we are stupidly at their side, not only cheering them on, but helping them create the technology required to create record levels of suffering and pain and death. And then how ironic it is that those same things get turned on us, as we've seen recently in America. The government is turning its attention, not just America, look at Australia, all around the world, Philippines, everywhere. It's happening everywhere. It's happening in Scotland, happening in England. The scope has been turned onto the people, and this is long prophesied as something that would happen. That that you can support something, and eventually it's going to be you. I've said in better words than I just said it there, but basically, we allow them to sell us a narrative that is piss weak, and the automatons among us don't question it, and will actually support it, and will actually try to take you out if you even say anything bad against it. The protectors of the system. And this is why I don't like socialism and communism, because people who rely on the system like a child sucking on a tit, those people will be the ones that vigorously defend that mother system, and they will never see it as evil, because it's their bringer of life, as they see it. They don't even know that they're so much less than they could be. So they just see this: you're trying to attack my mother, bringing down the system. So then we have this basically hopeless battle against these automatons who outnumber us all, these unthinking people who are literally programmed. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of point out that one, see that a little bit of history repeating, although things are getting worse as the history is more. History probably likely didn't have more than 1 billion people, or let's say no, definitely no more than 2 billion people at any point in human history. Even the unrecorded history don't know about. But just by the things that we have found, the size of the cities that we have found, kind of tells us this, right? So let's say very maximum billion people, right? Most likely. Now we've got 8. I think the reason for this, the intentional build, I've said in other videos before that the possible reason for the promotion of the population explosion was to harvest more energy. So, for example, more people thinking about overcoming problems, more people building stuff, but also more people suffering, more people dying on a daily basis, more loss. The mortality rate increases as the population increases, But it could also be for more just glee from absolute slaughter. Um, we turn on the so-called enemies, and it's not really the enemies of us. It never has been. Think about Second World War. Think about every war. Every war, you've got Americans sitting at home, and British sitting at home saying, these Hajis, and like, yeah, these bloody Muslims coming over here, and then they got all this propaganda that tells them that's the enemy. And this guy's never he's heard of their country, but he's just too busy living his life, grazing his goats and shit like that. He would never in his wildest dreams, unless he was going to die or think he's going to die, make his way all the way to England. That happened because of the interference of our governments in their countries, right? And then we tell them, we get a lot of this, and we get a lot of this around the world where we create an enemy out of people by giving them preferential treatment. I've said this since New Zealand when I was in my teens, because I noticed that so this is back in the 90s, where what they would do in New Zealand is give Maoris grants and gifts and stuff really easy. It almost seemed very unfair. You're supposed to have a thing called the Treaty of Waitangi to level out the playing field, and everyone's New Zealander, blah blah blah. And then you got this thing where that black people and brown people pretend it doesn't happen in their races, but it does. Where people will say racist things like white people will do. They definitely will do it, but every race does. And that is this kind of wink, wink, nudge, nudge. You know what Maoris are like, blah blah blah. Or the government give them anything they want. It wasn't Maoris that created these rules. It was white people. And I'm sure in the countries where, like India, where people are losing their property because of being white, right? They can't own stuff. So I know plenty of people who've left India because they can't own stuff anymore because the government have changed the rules. Despite the fact that Indians are all around the world owning property everywhere, they've made it very difficult now to own properties. So just never fool yourselves into thinking that racism is a white thing. But these people that want to create division all the time, they will put things in place. They will give preferential treatment to. They'll even open the floodgates like the Democrats and Republicans did to get cheap labor, because George Bush did it too. And what they do then is they bring those people in to get the short-term cheap labor, and if you're a Democrat, probably the children, so they can harvest the children. I'm sure all this stuff does happen. And the others, because everything's a win-win-win situation for them. They make multiple wins out of the same act, right? So one of the main wins is, right, we then make the local people, well, first of all, we dilute the culture by giving cultural Marxism. But we don't do that to the country they're leaving. So the person looks over and says, how come Pakistan gets to say the same, and yet America's got to water down its culture? It's already watered down its culture from the original people who were living there, and now it's watered down even more from this American malformed situation that we had into some new multicultural thing that actually means no culture, all right? Well, the same thing, the same thing that the preferential treatment does, let's say when you can get a grant, if you're a Maori in New Zealand and you can't get one if you're white or even Samoan or whatever else, this creates animosity. And so does it when people look over to the other country and say, hey, they get to keep their culture and we don't. Hey, hang on, they get rights in our country. They get more rights than me in my country, and I don't get any rights in their country. And of course, this is the start of then creating the racism that they didn't cause because they were not in control. So This is how it starts, the seeding of the mind into saying, there's the enemy over there. There he is. That's what he looks like. Yeah, kill them, bomb them. Yeah, good job. And here we are cheering on these aliens to do the most despicable things to people who are definitely more like us than these creatures above us in each country. Are I used to say that one of the if you look at, I don't know, the likes of anyone from Trump to Kim Jong Un and Kim Jong Il, they will have the globe, and then you have the mountains sticking up, and you have all these people below the mountains, and then you have the people on top of the mountain, above the clouds. They can see each other. Hey, Kim. Hey, hey, Trump. Hey, Obama. Blah blah blah. They're all above there, and then it's like, what? Basically, the timeless version of "Yo, Mama said what?" You said, "What about my mama?" or whatever. And then before you know it, they've got beef with each other, or he likes the looks of his woman over there. And next thing you know, they're peering below the clouds. Hey, you, automaton fools! Go over there and fight these guys over there. They're your enemy. Oh, here's some propaganda. Here's some shoveling the shit down to them, so they suck it all up. And then before you know it, right, you all hiked up. On you go. Slaughter. Oh, look, still some are alive. Oh, well, come back. Here's a medal. All right. And right, we're going to get to take some of his land over there. The guy on the other side did the same thing, but he had to concede a little bit. And it'll be like, never forget what they did to us. And they are your enemy because they took part of your land. And it was only because actually he probably started the fight because he wanted a little bit more for himself. Everyone killed 50% of his people because of his greed. And got less in the end, as often happens when you're a greedy pig. But he didn't really pay the price himself because he has more than he would ever require anyway. And so to finish on this kind of topic about having more than you would ever require anyway, people often ask me why I do not like Warren Buffett, why I cannot stand the man. And it's for the same reason that I cannot stand Tom Cruise or anyone who is a hog with success that's not difficult success. Warren Buffett's success is not difficult. If you have money when he has money and you repeat the same tactics, you would also grow your wealth quickly. You put $1 billion into anyone's pocket, except for maybe Donald Trump, because he was able to actually have less money than he should have if he had received his inheritance, whatever you want to call it, and just put his money in a savings account. He'd have more money now than what he ended up having before he was president, right? I'm sure there's many people like that out there, because what happens is nepotism doesn't favor. This is why our history is taken so long for mankind to move forward, because nepotism doesn't favor survival of the fittest. And this is actually one way where, if you look at dysgenics, which I also talk about quite a lot, how our systems vilify and anyone who talks about eugenics, and they also, or even survival of the fittest, they will make a demon of you for insinuating that we probably need to actually have some of this to get to we wouldn't have had to have it before, but to undo the dysgenics that might be required in the future, simply not to die off as a species. It might be required one day. But the reason why do we have this dysgenics? Well, maybe because that's how they operate. Look at Prince Charles. Look at their inbreeding caused their DNA to get weaker and weaker and weaker. They believe they are special because they are effectively weakening themselves. And the only thing that really gives them power is the fact that they can pass on their wealth to other generations. Another thing that I've spoken about in other videos too, that the Indians and the Maori in New Zealand didn't do. You couldn't own land, for example, because land owned you. That's the earth owns you, not the other way around. So yeah, I think I've gone a little bit of a segue here into a different topic, but this was more about the fact that these tyrants are not really that intelligent. That I really believe that they require artificial intelligence because they can't work on themselves. They might even be devoid of soul for all we know, but they can't work on themselves. So what they have to do is hinder our progress make us having to do jobs so that we don't spend time learning who we are and what we are. And they have nothing to learn about the incels, but they can just, so that all they can do with their spare time is partake in things that you would say that aren't very righteous or aren't very nice, whatever. Just debauchery, and throughout history, same thing. There were people who didn't deserve the power they got and did nothing great with it. And depends what your idea of great is, but I don't see conquering and killing as something that's great. Destruction is not a great thing. It can be awesome power, but it's not a great thing. Creation is a great thing. Progress and advancement to bring us towards increased levels of sentience. They're great things. But advancements that, as you can see, technology is doing for us today, makes you become weaker and weaker and weaker, is the same as the elite are doing. They're trying to get us to emulate them, which has become weaker and weaker and weaker. They're also getting us to cheer them on as they commit heinous crimes, only to have the last laugh against us in the same way that these people in the video that I'm going to link below, the guy that created the first torture bull, where the bull would open up, the person would go inside and it would amplify the noise of the person got roasted alive because they locked the thing on you, and these torture devices they made, bulls and a horse and there was another one. There's a few different. There was one horse. There was a bull. Anyway, I can't remember what the other one was. So that was the great thing there. That this horrible human being that thought of this, the even more horrible human being that he's creating it for, took the joy and put. Imagine how ironic it would be if that guy's screaming in pain inside this device himself. Oh, I can't resist it, and then puts this guy in there. Well, at least that's some kind of good spin on what happened there. But we're doing the same thing when we're cheering on the soldiers over in Iraq and calling them sand niggers, is what I've heard people say in America, because I'm white, and by the way, I've overheard many black people saying many things about white people, about when I grew up in South Africa. And I overhear things, and you understand a bit of Zulu, you understand a bit of Sotho. We had to learn other languages in school. You hear there's no difference. Look, you hear even these in America between African Americans, certain things like it's like hoodwinks. You know what I mean? I think that's the term they use, where it's like it's not esoteric, but when you have like a code for certain people, there's words in Scottish that English wouldn't understand. There's things that I overhear English people saying down in England when I lived in England for 8 years of my life. Hearing them say certain things, and because I have a different accent, I've had comments even said to me because they don't realise I'm Scottish. So these things happen within the same race. They happen across race, and every race does it to the same level. It's no different. It's about how dumb you are. That's what happens there. So my point there was that we're going to cheer these things on, and the dumber we allow ourselves to be, we're going to be, the same pain we inflict or cheer on will be inflicted upon us. So at least something's fair in this universe. I'm not going to talk about this much anymore. I just think it was quite interesting. I think you're going to really enjoy this link I'm going to put it down below. All right, have a good one. Let me think if there's anything else I can say about this before I finish off here and think, oh, I wish I'd said that. Oh yeah, one thing is just maybe if we can look at some of these historical references. We know they can be bent. We know that the Bible, this King James Bible, when he translated it in 1611, maybe when it had 15 more books than it has today, including the Book of Enoch or the 3 books of Enoch. Maybe he got some things wrong. Maybe, as we've seen in the case of the moving of the Islamic place of worship from what is now called Mecca to what was Mecca, which is Petra, These people have come through and purposely rewritten our books to be false. And this might also explain why the Vatican removed 14 to 15 books of the Bible, because it's all about tainting the word, mocking mankind, and creating confusion as we get dumber and dumber and dumber. And another video I might give. I don't want to freak people out, getting too into energy and stuff like that. But upon energy lines, and it doesn't matter. I won't get into it. So I will. I'll leave it there. But I just wanted to say that if we don't, even if these things aren't true history, they might just be exaggerations of some of tales that were passed down, or they could actually be symbolic representations of history. But if we don't look at these things and see that there is lessons there, it'd be a bit coincidental that all throughout history we get these repeating lessons that are told in different ways, and that they wouldn't point to something that is either real or something that can be repeated again. So we've got to take heed from what we see from these, whatever scriptures, tablets, Sumerian text, whatever it is that we can find, and be armed with possible knowledge. Be aware that most things, just like we read today, instead of censoring information, what do we find out? We just take in more information. Your brain will end up filtering out what's good, or using, well, hang on, pattern recognition here. Maybe that news story in the news of the world actually was true, because now that this is happening in front of my face, let's go access that. It's not like what they try to bring across, is that your memory, you don't want to get your memory to get too full, and then what will happen is everything will start spilling over. It's not how it works. So let us see the information. We don't need YouTube to block stuff. We can block ourselves, thank you very much. We don't need you. We're big enough and ugly enough to do things for ourselves and learn our own lessons. And if we do that, well, there's probably some hope for us to avoid cataclysmic events, or, for all we know, avoid having the wrong powers take control of the world for too much longer, which I believe has been the case for the last maybe couple of thousand years to possibly 10 or more thousand years. But definitely the last 2,000, there's been a balance of power where the people in power tend to be evil, tend to be the people who are least deserving of that power they hold. And then again, you could just say that's a byproduct of the fact that people who chase after power are people who are sociopaths, narcissists, people like that, people who are basically psychopaths, and hence that's the reason why we end up with all these CEOs heading companies. Yeah, I'm going to leave it there. Oh God, 33. Yeah, I'm going to leave it there. Yeah, that's it really. Bye.